Thank you. It's really great to be here at the Farm Bureau. We've been working very closely ever since I started my campaign for Senate and now as United States Senator. It's been wonderful to have the resources here and to have the ability to reach out and talk to farmers all across the state and just get advice and counsel when it comes to issues, whether it is trade, whether it is crop insurance, whether it is my current work with biofuels and making sure that we support Illinois agriculture and continue to make this state a nation's leader when it comes to the ag sector. So thanks for joining me here at the Farm Bureau headquarters in Bloomington.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Start questions now, or do you, like you said, talking to experts, things like that. I mean, you didn't grow up on a farm, and so how important is it to come to places like the Midwest that are so farm enriched, and really get the perspective from those you might not have ever met?
Right, so it's great to have this resource. I did not grow up on a farm, but I lived in DeKalb for many, many years, and my first job in Illinois over 27 years ago was with the American Farmland Trust. So I am fairly familiar with agricultural issues, and it was really funny because as a congresswoman, I represented a small suburb of Chicago, and when I started talking with folks in the ag community, I said, listen, and I started talking about a lot of farm issues and crop insurance. Like, how do you know all this? I said, well, because I used to work for the American Farmland Trust, and I get it. I've detasseled corn along with, if you live in DeKalb, you have to detassel corn at some point in time. And we were able to really establish a great working relationship. And now that I am in the Senate, it's really important to have folks that I can turn to and say, look, we're working on issues that has to do with locks and dams on the Mississippi. We are working on issues that have to do with WRDA or issues that have to do with making sure that we provide the services to our agricultural community, the same level of service that we give to Chicago or large metropolitan areas. And so to have this partnership has been really important.
There are two big issues that relate to the agriculture community right now. One, NAFTA is obviously being renegotiated, started today. The Trump administration, obviously it relates to our partners in Canada and Mexico. And the Farm Bill, the Secretary of Agriculture just toured through the Midwest. What are you hearing from the agriculture industry, obviously during the stop today, and what do you take back to Capitol Hill as it relates to those two issues that you can have a dialogue with your peers in the Senate?
Well, I'm really pleased that Secretary Perdue came through Illinois and stopped in Illinois on his tour. And in fact, I voted for him. I was one of the Democrats who voted to confirm him. I think that he really understands, especially corn and soybean, which is really important for us. And so I was very pleased that he came through and can be a partner. But that said, the Department of Agriculture's budget is significantly cut under the budget that President Trump put forward. And I'm going back to Washington at the end of August, and we're going to go right into that budget talk. And I'm going to work as hard as I can to put more money into the Department of Agriculture. Programs that are cut in it include everything from support to innovative programs for younger farmers to protecting safe drinking water in rural communities. And so the cut to the ag budget is really significant for agricultural communities. As far as trade is concerned, my focus will be to make sure that we protect trade and not allow agriculture to get caught up in the fights that happen when it comes to the manufacturing sector. That's the problem that happened with TPP, for example. TPP failed largely because a lot of the failures within the manufacturing side comes with Chinese-made products. It had nothing to do with agriculture, as an example, in terms of the difficulties it ran into. So my job will be to make sure that my colleagues understand how vital and important agriculture is, and to continue to defend and stand up for those ag interests, because we are the greatest agricultural producer in the world. We are the gold standard. People in China want to buy food grown in the United States. They trust the food grown here more than they trust the food grown in China. And we need to make sure that we maintain that edge.
Farmers are particularly wincing about the cuts to crop insurance as well. Is that something you're going to advocate strongly for, or is there a middle ground with what the Trump administration is proposing on that issue? Where do you fall?
Yeah, I know. I refuse to start from the cuts. There's this idea that the Trump administration is coming with such a huge cut to allow us to negotiate to somewhere in the middle. I refuse to let the starting point for negotiations be that massive cut. We need to start from where crop insurance was currently, where it is currently, and have the conversation there. I will advocate very strongly for crop insurance. The problem that we have is that a lot of people who, folks who live in New York and in large metropolitan areas and represent those areas don't understand what crop insurance is. I hear from my colleagues often where they call it a handout. They call it a freebie. And when I tell them, no, actually farmers have to buy crop insurance. It's a decision they make at the beginning of the year in order to make sure they protect themselves. And people don't even realize that. And so I'm not going to let folks who don't understand crop insurance start the negotiations from a negative. We start from where we are, and we'll negotiate from there. And I know you won't find a stronger supporter for crop insurance than me.
That's your last question.
The Republican McLean County Party chair, Republican McLean County Party chair, has doubled down on President Trump's remarks on the equivalency issue regarding Charlottesville, saying that both sides are to blame and share responsibility. Your response to that equivalency argument?
I reject it. If you stand with Nazis and you stand with racists, then you are not a fine person. Then you are not a patriot, and you are not someone who truly loves this country, because it goes against the very values that founded our nation. I reject racism. I reject white nationalists. I reject Nazis. There's no room for that. I always start my conversations with folks assuming that they love this country as much as I do, and we negotiate and we work there and try to find common ground. But if you are someone who is a Nazi, you do not truly love this country, because you can't truly love America and at the same time be a Nazi or be a racist.
Is it fair, though, to add in the anti-fascist groups on the left, or the guy who took shots at the congressional baseball team, or even the eco warriors of the 80s and 90s?
I think what we see here is attempts by fascists and Nazis to muddy the waters, to take away their responsibility for what happened in Charlotte. We're talking about people who showed up with helmets and loaded weapons and went out there and conducted themselves in the name of Nazism. Look, I served in Iraq, attached to the 3rd Division. And this is a division that fought during the Battle of the Bulge to rescue the 101st Airborne Division. I have family members who fought for this country going back to the Revolution, who fought on both sides during the Civil War. But I know exactly who is on the side of America and who is not. And Nazis and white supremacists are not on the side of this country. You truly love this country, you cannot reject the very basic values that are enshrined in the Constitution of the United States.